and welcome to MTV, where this week we continue our Believe in You series with Perseverance Shaping. Oftentimes, I might find myself wanting to say, or really saying, I wish things were a little bit easier. How about you? The question, though, is if everything were easy, how would we learn anything? Because in our difficulties, in our challenges, we are pushed to persevere. And as we persevere, we end up learning. And so I want to submit to you Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 3, as we consider this week how perseverance shapes us for the future that is ahead. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out before us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy set before him, endured the cross, scorning its shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." And then it goes on to say in verse 3, "Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." There is so much in those three verses, but I just want to share with you briefly this week some things that have been significant for me and some learning that I have had. You know, when we moved to Texas, I thought up to that point I knew what perseverance was. I really wasn't prepared for the challenges that we would face in rebuilding our premier business here. It was a lot harder than what I ever imagined prior to us moving here. So what I thought was perseverance dramatically changed and expanded as we walked through day by day the challenges and the circumstances and the things that God allowed into our path. Was it difficult? Absolutely. Yet I can look back now and think, it was the best thing and the hardest thing that we've ever done. Why? Because I'm a different person as a result. Because I had to live out that throwing off the things that were hindering me from actually moving forward in our business. Things like bad thinking, that this is hard and it's not going to work. Or what about the problem with lack of action? There were days where I did not want to leave the house, yet I had to make the choice to get up and leave the house in order to meet people. There were days I didn't want to talk to people because I didn't want to hear another no or rejection of any kind. And through that, God was teaching me a new definition of perseverance, one of using circumstances and people and challenges to shape me into the person that he knew that I needed to be. Because truthfully, I didn't have as much compassion for a jeweler who struggled to get bookings on her calendar. I didn't have as much compassion for a jeweler who ran out of bookings and now is going, what do I do? What happens to my business now? And God knew I needed to develop compassion and grace and mercy in dealing with people in our business arena. So now when I train and when I speak to people, I speak from such a different place. Why? Because I was in a really tough situation and God was shaping me to be who I needed to be for the future that he knew. So I want to ask you, what challenges, be it circumstances or people, that you are facing right now that is requiring perseverance? Because God will use those circumstances and those people, those very challenges, to shape you into the man or woman that God knows you need to be for the certain future that only he knows. Now, I want to say that one more time because I think it is so important. God is going to use your circumstances to shape you into the man or woman that God knows you need to be in order to be prepared for the certain future that only he knows. Perseverance is shaping us. And when we feel like quitting, you know, then we can think about Hebrews 12, where it says, "Fix our eyes on Jesus, who for the joy set before him. So he is our shining example of persevering. When we are challenged because the road is hard, we can consider the fact that Jesus withstood a lot of opposition, and yet he did not grow weary, so that we, by following his example, will not grow weary. Perseverance shaping you to become the person that God knows that you need to be. He certainly used our first year and a half out here in Texas to shape me into a different woman through the persevering that I needed to actually live out. And so I challenge you this week as we go into Easter, where so many of the world will recognize and celebrate Jesus Christ's willing choice to walk the road to the cross, his cruel death, his conquering of the grave, so that he might now be seated at the right hand of the throne of God, ever living to make intercession, to pray for those of us who believe in him. As you approach Easter, would you consider fixing your eyes on him and choosing to persevere even when it's hard, even when you want to quit, even when it seems as though it will not work out? Why? Because God is using those very things to shape you to be who he desires you to be, so that you can bring him the most glory from this point forward.